also back on the podcast. So it's a delight to be with these lovely young ladies who are deep into their studies, their areas of interest, and I'll get them to bring you up to speed as to what they're studying and their full name and everything. So we'll just go around the group. I'd love Taylah to share what you're studying and your interests, please.
Yeah, so I am doing a Bachelor of Health Science, Clinical Nutrition. I'm just started my second year, so I'm loving it so far. I am really interested in food and longevity and how everything all kind of works together so you can have the best life, really.
Yeah, don't we all want the best life? I can see Maddie and Morgan nodding their head. We certainly want to have optimal health span. So, look forward to your insights there, Taylah. So over to you, Maddie.
So I'm Maddie. I am a student in psychology, and I go to Boston University, and I'm in my third year. And Morgan and I are doing a project with Anthony about anxiety. So I would say like an interest of mine is getting deeper into anxiety. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you've joined the right episode. So we're going to be diving deep into anxiety, particularly around the mind and the gut axis side of things. So how the mind affects the gut and the gut affects the mind. So over to you, Morgan.
Yeah, so hello again. I am Morgan. I am a neuroscience major at Boston University, also finishing up our third year and working with Madeline on our anxiety project for Anthony, which we are really excited to share about. Other than that, I'm very interested in studying like the gut-brain axis and how that all works together and intertwines. It's about me.
Excellent. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's excited. I don't think I've had a trio on before, a trio of guests. So the Joyful Mate podcast listeners are certainly would be absolutely delighted to have such great expertise on the show. So let's get into the anxiety and the impact it's having on our gut, and vice versa. The gut disturbances can have on how we how we feel about ourselves. So let's start with the gut. So Taylah, what would someone be looking out for in terms of having some gut disturbances or a gut that's not really functioning well? What would they be experiencing?
Well, I mean, your gut and your brain are obviously connected. So then also what you consume is going into your gut. So that it's all working, I guess, together. So what you consume is then going to affect your gut, and then what's happening in your gut is then going to affect your brain, which then will affect your mood, how you feel throughout the day, your appetite, and all of that kind of stuff. So if they're not, working together and you're not consuming good foods for your body, then that's ultimately going to affect your mood and if you feel anxious or depressed or anything like that. So yeah, it all works together.
So someone that's got some gut dysfunction, they're going to not feel good in that area of their body. They could be experiencing some digestive issues, whether it be slow to digest or digesting too fast. It's moving through the gastrointestinal tract way too quickly. So those looser bowel motions, or that needing to urgently go to the toilet, is a sign, or where it just stops and nothing's coming out the other end. That's another disturbing gut issue. And as everyone feels, when the intestines aren't working and moving, we don't feel great, do we? Like, we feel clogged up. I think we've all experienced what that feeling's like, and it's that just feel heavy, a bit weighted down, and then just because when you do have a bowel motion, you feel that lighter and relieved, and there's a sense of energy that comes with that too. Having that release of those toxins out of the body. So certainly, those those things that are either going too fast or too slow in the gastrointestinal tract. And what else? We got the bloating. The bloating. What else, Taylah, that we might sense in our guts that things aren't working well?
Yeah, bloating, which then along comes discomfort as well. And I think as well, if you do feel anxious or stressed, you definitely can notice in your stomach kind of like butterflies. And then, yeah, makes you need to go to the bathroom as well. So I feel like it's just a whole lot of discomfort.
Yeah, and those butterflies can make you feel that you don't want to eat,
Yeah.
and you don't eat, or they can also feel that you need something to relax the butterflies. So then you actually eat, and so it can really drive, I guess, eating behaviors and create some patterns around when you're feeling anxious or a bit unsettled. So Maddie and Morgan, in terms of anxiety, it's obviously a trigger to gut disturbances. What is, let's circle back to what is anxiety and what can trigger someone's anxiousness.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also touched on this in our previous episode as well, but in terms of anxiety and what Taylah was talking about, really looking at some of the environmental stressors and how those would contribute to our anxiety as well. And then looking then further into how is this being triggered, our enteric nervous system, our vagus nerve, and the communication between our gut and our brain and just how that all works together, and makes for a really not super awesome recipe that leads to anxiety. And I think that's a lot of what me and Maddie have been looking into and implementing our exercise experiment and our low sugar diet, and just kind of how that can, those simple lifestyle changes can help affect how we perceive our anxiety and our experiences with anxiety as well.
Yeah. So, Maddie, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like anxiety is like your natural response to like feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And I think you said like how does someone like feel anxious? Like when do they get that? And I think it really is a case by case. Like anyone can feel anxious or overwhelmed by anything. It kind of depends on the person. So I feel like anxiety is just such a like, it's a very universal thing that can kind of come out of nowhere, and it's hard when it does come out of nowhere and you don't know what to do with it. So I think being able to like manage it through like nutrition is a great way of kind of, I guess, having it kind of balance out and level out, which is something we've also been doing with Hump Day Harvest. We have our little cooking show where we kind of get like easy, simple recipes that are good on anxiety. So I feel like a bunch of things that we've been noticing in our recipes, they've almost all had like ginger, and they've had a lot of like onions, like a lot of prebiotic and probiotic foods, as well as like we did salmon bowls, like omega, like the fatty acids. So I think it's interesting to note like there are some foods that we've noticed are more linked to reducing anxiety,
for sure.
Which would be interesting to talk to you guys about, especially because you guys are all about nutrition. So
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you raise, is that it's very much person oriented. So some of the foods that can tame anxiety can also trigger gut disturbances. And like, so for example, onions, I know my wife doesn't resonate well with raw onion. It doesn't sit on her stomach well, and that will create that sort of discomfort and bloating, and so. But also the flip side is that it can also be quite taming and helpful. So yeah, it's very person dependent as to whether the food will resonate or not resonate, and can induce the problem. Like you mentioned, you're experimenting with low sugar and whether that helps with taming anxiety. You can imagine that some people with low sugar probably get a bit anxious about not having sugar, right? Or so really keen to explore this with you, Taylah, around, so there's foods that are probably more prone to inducing anxiety, and foods that are so more triggering. And then there's foods that are, as Maddie and Morgan have identified, that are more taming. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few studies done that have definitely linked, diets that are high in fruit and vegetables, omega-3 fatty acids, like that help with anxiety. And then diets, on the flip side, that have high levels of fat and sugar and all of, the not so good stuff for us that increase our levels of anxiety and fluctuate our mood and stuff, whereas having the more whole foods keeps it more balanced and helps our system stay balanced compared to those other foods, which can cause inflammation and all of that kind of stuff, which isn't good for us.
Yeah, so just on the fat side of things, you're referring to more those processed fats, like the deep fried, the ones that contain trans fats, and
Yeah, all the ultra processed foods.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Whereas the healthy fats, they're good for us.
yeah. And what are some of those more fats that we should be consuming more of that are good
Like
for the
avocados, nuts and seeds, the fatty fish, so like salmon, mackerel, and all of that. Yeah, they're all good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's more getting away from the process. Essentially, we need to clean up our diet in order to remove more of the triggers. So it's
100%.
getting,
I think one of the biggest things to note as well is that it's very much of a trial and error journey. And I think Madeline and I have both experienced that. It's unfortunately not the answer that most people are looking for, because you're looking to find this perfect diet that works for you and is going to clean up all of your issues and your stomach problems and your gut issues and your anxiety, whatever it is. But unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time to figure out what works for your body and doesn't work for your body. And it can be frustrating after a while. So I guess my biggest question is, like, what would you guys recommend in terms of that process of acquiring a diet that works for you, and just general rules that we can start and follow as we're all exploring this journey of finding a diet that works for us?
Yeah, and I think a part of what you shared there, Morgan, is that it also changes as we age. So we've got this aging factor. So what was working for me in my 20s, which you're in the young 20s, it doesn't work for me anymore. And so I think it as you mentioned, it's certainly a journey, but it's a forever long journey. It's not like you'll come across a diet in the early 20s that will fix you up for life. Like it's more an evolving and a constant work in progress. And I think that's probably a very important point around the mental health side of things, is if you believe that you'll find the perfect diet, then that's a fantasy. And I think that can really set you up for thinking that or frustration is because you're not landing at that perfect diet. It doesn't exist. And so I think the best takeaway for me to share with the listener is that it's a constant journey. It's a never ending journey. And just to make a start and just to make improvements. And I've been on this journey for at least 40 years. I'm really showing my age here, but and I'm still improving it today, which is incredible and also awesome as well, because it means I can continue to take my health to another level, which means that's endless as well. We don't just arrive at a healthy state. There's no such thing. It's constant work in progress. So yeah, I think you brought you raised a very important point there, Morgan, is that it's a journey, and it's a journey that you need to go on, because even as a clinical nutritionist, I don't know your body as well as you know your body. No one knows your body as well as you know your body. So you're the best judge as to whether that food is sitting well and resonates with you. And I think the best way to interpret whether a food's resonating with you is, do you feel energized after having that food, provided you're not drinking Red Bull, right? So yeah, to take away the Red Bulls and the caffeinated stuff. But if that food sits and digests well, then most likely it's resonating well with your body. If it doesn't sit well and results in any of those gastrointestinal disturbances we talked about before, then that's probably a food to eat less of or totally to avoid. So what's your take on it, Taylah?
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely is a trial and error. Your taste buds change, everything does change as you get older, and also what you are doing with your life at that current time. So I think just trialing different things, and again, like you said, you know yourself better than anyone else does. So eating foods, and if it doesn't agree with you, then eliminating it for a certain period of time, and then even reintroducing it, and it might sit better with you. So I think, yeah, definitely just trial and error, and trialing different foods is great for your body anyway, to have all the diversity. So
Yeah,
Um,
because it's also a nice journey to go on from a curiosity point of view.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah. Like, is this food going to help me and serve me? And then you add that to your repertoire, and then you work out, how can I cook with this, and what can I make with this? And so it adds that excitement and that exploration, curiosity as well. So I think it's good from a mental health perspective in terms of having that expansive awareness and openness towards trying new foods and testing them, and just seeing it as a journey. I think it's nice.
Yeah, it can get boring if you eat, the same foods all the time. So experimenting with it, and even, using the same ingredients to make something new, like, keeps it exciting.
And then going off of that, you guys are mentioning like trying new foods. How long, or like diets, I guess, would you like, for the trial and error tip, like part of it, how long should you trial it out? Because for like, we just did the no sugar thing for like 3 weeks, and the beginning like was hard, and it made me like think, oh, like obviously like my body doesn't want this, but it was just like getting used to not having as much sugar as it used to, like, and that's just like part of how, like, I don't know, you get used to like a diet. So, and then like as we went on, it got a lot easier, and I felt a lot better, and I felt like it was like, I felt like more energized than I did before. But how do you know like to wait that long until you're like, oh, like maybe that isn't good for me, like maybe I just shouldn't do that? I don't know if that made sense.
It did. It made a lot of sense. And I think it's a great question, because the point I was making before is, if it resonates well with you and digests well, then it's something that, but the flip side is that you're doing something that's supposedly going to work for you based on the theory and the research. And you then feel that it's difficult or challenging, and how long. So you're asking, how long do you persist with something like reducing sugar or taking out this? And so for me, it's like, if you're doing something so clear, like we didn't evolve with a lot of sugar in our diet, right? So sugar's a new introduction, a recent introduction, based on how long humankind's been around, relative, if you look at the timelines. And so it's and our bodies were probably adapting to a high sugar diet, but slowly and surely, but it's causing problems in the process and disorder in the body. And so I think we know from a general standpoint that it doesn't resonate really well with most people. And then the body's going to, with any change, there'll be an adaptation phase to that change. So you might adapt quickly, or you might be a slow adapter. And how do I know whether you're going to be a quick adapter? So some people can respond to being off no sugar quite quickly. Whereas like for you, Maddie, what you noticed is, geez, this was hard. And how long is it going to be hard for is the question, right? And I guess it's like, how long's a piece of string? And so it's different for everyone. Like, so one of the big changes I've recently done is, and this is based on aging, right? So as we age, we suffer mitochondrial heteroplasmy, which is essentially the mitochondrial reduction in efficiency as we age, right? The mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell. And it utilizes obviously our food energy and what we put in. And as we get older, we become less, we don't process the carbohydrates as well. But we can still process the fats much better. And so I've had to shift my diet from being sort of more carbohydrate oriented to more fat. And that change in my diet and changing those macros, shifting those macros away from the carbohydrates towards the fats, I was suffering what, people call the keto flu. And, for me, that went on for months. But now, like, I'm doing it, and I operate really well on fat burning. And so, like, I can go for long periods without any food, without any problems. And yeah, so like I can increase my intermittent fasting or my fasting period because I don't suffer the symptoms anymore. But before, I really noticed like headaches and stuff like that. And so, but that took months. So I think it's, I guess you really want to make sure there's evidence behind it to what you're doing as to how long you persevere with it. If it's having like really severe, if you're having a real severe response, then maybe it's toning it down. So it's therefore dose dependent. So if we go like, for me, if I go 0 carbohydrates and just heaps of fats and heaps of protein, then that's going to be a lot different to if I just wean down the carbohydrates and slowly increase the fats. And so if you're a more sensitive person, then I think it's sort of winding down the sugar. And I know with your experiment, you didn't wipe out sugar entirely. From a purist point of view, what you did is you just didn't add it to anything, right? And so it was more the added sugar. So that's more a weaning process as opposed to going all hog. So if you were to say no sugar, then that's, includes fruit sugars, it includes dairy, the lactose, the fructose, it includes the sugar. And so therefore it's much broader. And then you're looking at, you're looking at the back of the ingredients, has it got any sugar in it? And, it's got to say 0. And so that's a more full-on approach to it. And so that full-on approach may result in more severe symptoms. And if you can't tolerate that, then it's probably more the weaning process that you want to adopt. What are your thoughts, Taylah?
Yeah, and I think it also depends on how much of it you were eating beforehand, and then if you completely cut it out. So yeah, it would definitely be different for everyone, and dependent again on what kind of sugars it was, whether it was from fruit and you're cutting fruit down, or from the ultra processed foods and then you're just cutting that out completely after eating it maybe a couple times a day. It definitely would make such a difference.
Yeah, and I think also the other thing about the orthorexia approach, which, the full-on approach where we just go hardcore, is that I think it creates problems in itself, because then you're totally taking out a food group or and then you could become very intolerant to it. And then for super sensitive, if there's a little bit in some additive or something, and so it could create whereas I think by having a little bit there keeps us more, I guess, tolerant. And I think it's healthier for the immune system to have some exposure. And yeah, so I also see problems, with the black and white approach that could be perceived as healthier. So I don't think the hardcore approach is all that great. I think it's more the tapered approach that you did, Maddie and Morgan. And then, so you've had that couple of weeks, you're starting to feel more energetic. Do you want to try it a bit further and take out a little bit more sugar, or you're just happy where you are? And so it's really a person dependent and what goal they're ultimately trying to seek.
Right, for sure.
Do you guys feel much different after cutting it out?
I think, yeah, I agree with Maddie. It definitely took a good week or so just to get past that detox phase. And then the last 2 weeks felt super great. And then on our last day when we finished, we were like, let's reward ourselves and see how our bodies feel. And so we were out to dinner and we ordered a dessert. And not even 30 minutes after, we both headaches, stomach aches.
Yeah.
We had to go back to our peppermint tea
We
to
had to
help
drink-
us
yeah.
detox. Like it was so bad. And so I think we didn't realize how much it would have how much it did affect us just in the short 3 weeks that we did it. So yeah, I've gone back to definitely trying to implement the low added sugar because I didn't realize how terrible those things would make me feel when my body wasn't used to it anymore.
Yeah, because what did you cut out when you were doing
We
it?
cut out any added sugars, and like no honey or those types of sweeteners. We did do fruit, but I
Yeah.
would say overall we did
Like we didn't eat any like anything that in the nutrition facts, if it said
Mhm.
sugar, like we didn't eat it. Like the only sugar we really ate was like fruit and like I don't know, like
it was a very jarring experience for us because when we would go to the grocery store, there were so many fruit or so
Yeah.
many snacks that we just had no idea
would keep
had all
looking
of
at the
these
back.
sugars hidden in them.
it'd be sugar.
No idea.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do we?
Yeah, no, I would say overall, like it was a very eye-opening experience for us
Yeah.
because you don't realize what you're eating half the time and you don't realize what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, I ended up eating like too much fruit. And then because it was like I'm such a sweet tooth, like I need sweet. So I was eating, because we talked about this earlier about how like, oh, like you shouldn't eat too much fruit. And I remember hearing that and being like, oh no. Because I was eating, I think I ate like 10 nectarines in like 3 days. Like I'm actually like I'm being so serious. And then right after we like had a conversation about that, and I was like, okay. So since then I haven't had any. And then because of the seasonal fruit, it's now gone. So that's great. So now I'm actually not
No more
I can't even have
nectarines.
any. So but yeah, I was eating a lot of fruit. Yeah.
And going forward, what do you think you'll do around this sugar journey you've been on? So what do you think you'll take going forward?
I think I'll probably stick to like low, like no.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know, because I love like chocolate. I think I need to like focus more on like in moderation because I have a lot of trouble with having the discipline to keep things in moderation. So I think like obviously like in moderation, like maybe like a dark chocolate like at night for dessert or something like that. But yeah, because I also realized like my stomach and my skin, like after I ate so much sugar, did not react very well. Like we already said like we didn't feel great. But, like I also like my skin just was not happy at all. And I think for my own well-being, and I should probably not eat as much sugar as I was previously.
Well, and I think too, like the biggest takeaway for us was just finding better alternatives to the things that we already love. And so it's not necessarily saying that you have to cut out every sweet treat for the rest of your life, but it's finding better alternatives. And maybe instead of having a chocolate bar, you have some dates, or you have a different alternative that might it does the same thing, but it's a better option for you and easier on the stomach for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's our plan going forward, is just being more mindful of it, because when you don't think about all the junk you're putting in your body, you're not really being mindful or aware of what it actually is that you're eating.
Yeah, and then relating that to anxiety, like we're also running. So we added running, and we took away added sugar at the same time. And it could have been a combination of both of them, or I'm not quite certain yet. But I also felt more like clear-headed. I didn't feel as like I still get anxious, but I don't find myself getting as anxious around things that I used to. Like I feel more grounded in a sense. So I would keep doing it. So recommend.
What about you, Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I knew this about my body before. I knew that when I would eat junk food and I wouldn't eat great and wouldn't work out for a couple days, I would feel really just terrible. You know, mental clarity is like totally not there, like totally foggy. And so just being more mindful of that and implementing the running and the low sugar diet and just in general, apart from the sugar or whatever, just being more mindful of what I'm putting in my body in general, you know, trying to increase my protein intake, that type of stuff as well, just makes me feel so much better and less brain fog for sure, you know, less moody. And so, yeah, that is definitely the biggest thing that I've noticed.
And Taylah, have you done anything around improving gut health, improving anxiety around food, lifestyle?
Not necessarily. I try to stay like pretty active myself, and I don't really consume that many ultra processed foods. So I do find when I'm being really on top of it as well, and you know, sticking to a structure, that I am definitely way more clear, way more focused. So yeah, you definitely can notice a difference. And like Morgan said, if you don't, you know, exercise for a couple days or you don't eat right, you really can notice the difference.
Yeah, and I think that's great words to conclude on, really, in terms of wrapping it up, is that if we don't eat what's right for us and serves us well, then it's going to cause gut disturbances. It will also directly affect the brain through, as Maddie and Morgan shared, through, you know, fogginess, not being as clear, and, you know, that can make us feel a bit more anxious. And so certainly really being conscious, and that's what I guess Maddie and Morgan also shared, was being more aware, being more mindful what we're putting into our bodies and how it's is it working for us or working against us, and just making those tweaks and improvements and trying and experimenting and going on that journey, I think, is another key takeaway. What's some key takeaways for you, Taylah?
I think it was definitely interesting to hear what the girls had to say after, you know, doing their trial and how quickly they noticed a difference, particularly within, it was only 4 weeks they did it. And how interesting it is that, you know, even though Maddie was consuming so much fruit, which is still so high in sugar, that didn't have any impact. Like, it had a positive impact compared to if she was eating that amount in processed foods, then it would negatively be impacting her. So I think, yeah, definitely just being more conscious about what you're eating and really listening to your body. Like, you know what feels right for you, and if you know, eat things that are fueling you, then you'll feel great, and then that in turn will make you feel happy, and you won't feel, you know, as anxious as you might usually feel if you're consuming things that you know aren't so great for you.
And what about you, Maddie, in terms of what are your key takeaways from the research project that you've run? And
Yeah, I mean, I would say, kind of as I said earlier, like I think it was great for me to implement like the no sugar or no added sugar and running, because I said this in the last podcast, but I genuinely don't think I would have, like, I didn't think I could do this. Like, I didn't think was capable of running. I didn't think I was capable of like actually taking out sugar. And it's nice to have Morgan as someone who can hold me accountable and like make sure I do it. And it's great to like that I actually did do it, and it made me feel a lot better. So I feel like a takeaway would just be like, maybe I will try something else. Try maybe, I don't know, go further with the no sugar, or I don't know. Like we said earlier, try different diets or adding different things. So I think that's something I'm looking forward to doing.
And you, Morgan?
Yeah, just like Maddie said, I think it was super fun and enlightening to try out these new lifestyle changes like a low sugar diet and exercise. I think one of the next things I would want to look into is the role that probiotics play in our life. And a big thing in neuroscience right now is looking at your gut microbiome and the diversity of that, and how that can then lead to substance use disorders and mental health issues, and the direct link that has. with a decreased gut microbiome diversity. And so I think that's something that I would really be interested in looking into, and super excited to try out in the future.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have to get you back on the podcast, Morgan, once you've gone down that rabbit hole, and you can share your findings with us and the listeners. Just want to thank you all for joining the Joyful Mate podcast listeners and watchers. It's been a delight to have you on, Taylah, Maddie, and Morgan. It's a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. And to the listeners, watchers, please share it with others that could benefit from hearing this great information, and also like and review the episode. Really want to get it as far wide as possible to ultimately achieve the aim of this podcast, which is to help people with more fulfillment, joy, and happiness. So thank you, ladies, and thank you, listeners.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent.